A surprising number of seniors in Memphis suffer from food insecurity. Tonight on The Best Times, we examine the No Hungry Senior Project. We'll expose the scams of the con artists that prey on older victims, and we'll tell you how to recognize the warning signs of strokes. Funding for The Best Times is provided by the Plow Foundation, striving to do the greatest good by helping the greatest number of people since 1964. Additional funding is provided by the members of WKNO. Thank you. Hello, I'm Chris Hardaway. Welcome to this edition of The Best Times, a series that looks at life after 50. Most of us never know real hunger. We never live with an empty stomach and the empty feeling of not knowing where the next meal is coming from. But according to a study from the National Foundation to End Senior Hunger, Tennessee, Arkansas, and Mississippi are three of the worst 4 states in the country for food insecurity among their older citizens. In Tennessee, 18% of our senior population is food insecure. But what does that phrase really mean? And what is being done to feed this vulnerable population? Tonight on The Best Times, we examine food insecurity.
Most people don't understand when you say hunger. No one's hungry in this country. You know, this is the land of plenty. What we found in our interviews with people, when we ask, have you ever been hungry? They say no. But if you ask, have you ever skipped a meal? The answer is yes. Have you ever had not enough to eat? The answer is yes. Have you ever gone a day without eating? The answer is yes. Have you ever missed more than a day without eating? The answer is yes. So that's hunger, but at the same time, it's food insecurity. It's not having enough to eat and not really knowing where your next meal will come from.
The number of people in Memphis who don't know where their next meal is coming from is eye-opening. The organization Feeding America reports that nearly 18% of Shelby County seniors are food insecure. That's almost 150,000 people at risk.
It's a number that concerns us because we're not reaching all of those people.
And we look at risk factors for hunger, one of which is living alone. Over 28% of our seniors live alone. We look at poverty rates, because that's another risk factor. And we have 24% that are at 149% of the poverty level or lower. And then we look at disability. And 40% of our seniors in that category, 65 and above, have at least one disability.
The impact of food insecurity goes far beyond mere hunger. Statistics from Feeding America show that 60% of food insecure seniors are more likely to experience depression. 53% are more likely to report a heart attack. 52% are more likely to develop asthma. And 40% are more likely to have congestive heart failure. It's estimated that food insecurity adds $130 billion to the cost of health care in this country every year.
Just the sheer numbers of seniors, the growth of that population is frightening.
That change begins at the offices of the Aging Commission. But as their executive director points out, the demand for food services far outstrips the supply.
There are 2,000 people on a waiting list that we can't feed for 18 to 24 months, and quite honestly, we have to wait till a slot comes open.
2,000 hungry people can't wait 2 years for help. The Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, more commonly known as food stamps, provides some help. Seniors living alone can receive an average of about $125 per month in assistance, but that's only about $1.40 per meal.
It's a minimal amount of money, a pitifully low amount of money.
In 2015, the Plow Foundation's Aging Initiative awarded a 3-year grant to 8 agencies in the Memphis area to develop the No Hungry Senior Project.
So we have seniors who are making tough choices. Am I going to get my prescription filled, or am I going to buy food? Am I going to pay my utility bill because it's cold or because it's too hot for me to sit in here with no utilities, or am I going to get food? So with our No Hungry Senior Collaborative, we want to take that choice off the table. We want seniors to have access to the food that they need.
MIFA is acting as the lead agency in this collaborative and will be one of the major distributors of food.
The partners in this grant have decided, for our purposes, that the target that we are shooting for and probably can't reach, but which we should shoot for, is about 4,000 seniors here in Shelby. The goals are to increase the independence of seniors, prolong their ability to stay in their own homes, increase their nutritional status, and their sense of well-being.
What we want to do is impact the health of our seniors in this community through health care, through better nutrition, and identifying resources that could help them age in place.
We have defined eligibility requirements. Through this questionnaire, which is a nutritional assessment, we have a numeric score at the end, and they must meet a certain score in order to qualify for this program because, as I said, it's for the most insecure.
The No Hungry Senior Project is already delivering food. Steve Freno and his daughter are among the MIFA volunteers that are beginning to whittle away at the Aging Commission's 2,000-person waiting list, delivering hot and frozen meals, shelf-stable meals, and grocery boxes.
You know, once I got out there on the road and did my first deliveries, I realized that it's not just a meal. A lot of time it's the personal connection. Sometimes we're the only people that these folks see on a daily basis. I do one of the poorer neighborhoods in Memphis. I do a route called Route 12 out here, and everywhere I go, I get asked by people, how can I get on the list? How can I get on the list? And I give them the phone number out. So it's obviously a huge problem.
What we're doing is much more than a meal. On top of that is the human contact, breaking the isolation, providing a link to the outside world.
A unique aspect of the No Hungry Senior Collaborative is the involvement of the Baptist and Methodist healthcare organizations.
The hospitals will be referring people to us. In conjunction with them, we'll determine what the best methodology is. We really want to know, and we will be studying readmission rates after 30 days of a nutritional intervention, because we think they can see really significant progress.
The No Hungry Senior program is slated to run through 2017 under the Plow grant. The program's sustainability will be determined by its performance and its ability to raise money beyond the grant period. One thing is certain: with boomers reaching age 65 at the rate of 10,000 a day, the challenges for a program like No Hungry Senior will only increase.
Okay, we're talking about 96,000 in Shelby County, 65 and above. What are we going to be talking about in 10 years and 20? Without changed circumstances. So.
But if you're feeding people, I just think that's the highest calling, and we have to do everything possible to make that happen.
In 2012, the Federal Trade Commission reported that 26% of all fraud and scam complaints to the agency were from victims aged 60 and older, the most of any age group. It's estimated that the annual financial cost of scams is between $40 and $50 billion. Now, we've all been tempted by offers that seem too good to be true. Unfortunately, the weakness of human nature often opens the door for scammers and con artists. So the next time you get an email from a Nigerian prince offering to share his fortune with you, don't believe it and don't get scammed. Now, scammers are really equal opportunity con artists. They don't particularly care who you are, what your gender is, or how old you are. But in general, what kinds of scams are perpetrated against seniors?
Some of the most common scams perpetrated against seniors are, of course, health care, health insurance related scams. The crooks take advantage of the headlines, and of course, the last few years, the Affordable Care Act has been big, and so they're going to kind of work their scam to make it sound a little bit more legitimate with the headlines. Counterfeit prescription drugs, funeral and cemetery scams. Some people don't realize that they don't have to buy certain products, services when they have to arrange a funeral, and yet they're also very vulnerable at that time. And unfortunately, some disreputable cemetery funeral people will take advantage of them. Fraudulent anti-aging products, telemarketing scams. We'll talk about some of those. Internet fraud, the internet. A lot of seniors are on the internet, and so they're susceptible to the same kinds of scams as everybody else. Investment scams. Many seniors are on fixed incomes, and so they're looking to augment their income. And these days, at very low interest rates on savings, they're susceptible to a scam that says, hey, you can get a better return on your money.
Why are seniors targeted?
One reason is in many cases they're home. Some scams are still perpetrated, somebody knocking on the door or calling, and they're home, whereas somebody who may, if they're retired, somebody who may still be working isn't there to take the call, isn't there to answer the door. They may be more trusting, and it's a sad commentary that many seniors grew up at a time when you didn't have to worry that somebody knocking on the door or somebody on the other end of the telephone was trying to steal your money, and they just haven't made that adjustment. They can't say no. They can't just hang up like they ought to hang up. Many of them are on, as I mentioned earlier, fixed incomes, so they're susceptible to some opportunity, if you will, to augment their income. Many of them are not as mobile as perhaps younger folks, and if somebody knocks on the door and says there's a hole in your roof, or do you need some work done around your home, a fence fell down, they're not capable of doing it themselves, and they may take advantage of that opportunity to have somebody help them out.
Give me some examples of some recent scams, specifically against seniors, but it could be scams in general, that you've run across.
Just this morning, just as I was leaving the office to come here, our marketing communications person said she'd just gotten a call from a lady in Jackson, Tennessee, who was a victim of one of the oldest low-tech scams, the paving scam. Somebody had knocked on the door. She wasn't home. Her husband was. He's apparently more elderly than she is. Knocked on the door and said that I just finished paving the driveway down the road. I've got leftover asphalt. I see that your driveway has some holes in it. I will give you a good deal. Rather than take this material back and throw it away, I'll give you a good deal on it. And the elderly gentleman said fine, and by the time all was said and done, they'd paid $5,000 that the crook, as soon as he got the check, hustled to the bank and cashed. So she couldn't even get the check stopped. For whatever they put down, unfortunately, will probably run off in the first rain.
Now that is truly a low-tech scam, but it's still happening.
It is, and another one we talked about, these are just examples. There's over 20 of them here, very sophisticated looking letters, phony sweepstakes and lotteries that one local gentleman got in a 2-week period last year. This isn't a year's supply.
It's in a 2-week period.
This is a 2-week period, so I'm sure he's probably got the other 50 weeks, and the stack would be much larger than this. And these are lottery and sweepstakes scams that you read it, you see these headlines, big dollars, very official sounding names. You read it, rather dense language. It leads you to believe that you've won some money. And in these cases, interestingly, all they want you to do here is maybe send a $20 or $30 registration that you will then supposedly get notified in return how much you've won. Well, if you read the language very carefully, it says, no, you really haven't won anything. We're just going to send you a list of sweepstakes that perhaps you could enter, and you might win. But that's $20, $30 times 20. then you multiply that by however many number during a whole year, and it becomes very lucrative.
Are you seeing scams targeting seniors regarding Medicare or Social Security or various government organizations?
Yes. One of the other more prevalent, common ones we hear about every day is what we call the medical alert scam. And folks get a call, generally it's one of these robocalls. The medical device scam, the story, it'll vary, but it'll generally be that someone has ordered one of these or you've qualified under Medicare. And of course, it's one of these things, a pendant, for example, that if you fall, you push a button and help is sent. And there are legitimate products, but in this case, the people don't tell you that there's going to be a monthly monitoring fee. They just ask you for a credit card number to pay modest shipping and handling. And then you start getting hit with some pretty heavy monthly monitoring charges, may or may not get the device. Again, there are legitimate products, but they're not going to be sold via this robocall.
Yeah, and Medicare or Social Security or even your bank or your credit card, they're not going to contact you by phone and ask you for specific information over the phone.
These robocalls, again, I alluded to Rachel from Cardholder Services is how many people get a call and says, this is it. Of course, it's all automated, but this is Rachel from Cardholder Services. There is no Rachel. And, you know, press 1 to find out how to get your interest rate in your credit card reduced. And you press 1 and they talk to you into some process that ultimately has you wiring some money or paying some money that you're probably not going to get anything in return. Those calls, we talked about technology, those calls are so insidious and so confounding that the Federal Trade Commission can't get them stopped. They've run several nationwide contests asking high-tech companies and entrepreneurs and inventors think of a way to block these robocalls so that people don't get victimized by these credit card scams, these medical device alert scams, phony grants, I could go on, home alarm systems. A lot of products are sold by these things.
Tell me about the grandparent scam.
Scam been around for, I'm going to guess 6-7 years since we started hearing about it. An elderly person will get a call, and it'll start off something to the effect that grandma, grandpa, depending on the gender of the person, this is your favorite grandchild, I'm in trouble, I need help. And of course, what the crooks rely on is that emotion outstrips common sense. And the grandparent may say, well, Susie, is that you? Tommy, is that you? Well, it'll be whoever it needs to be, okay? And so, oh, yes, it's me. And then the story may vary, but they may be generally in a foreign country, purportedly. Of course, they're not really. In a foreign country, they're in trouble, they've been in an accident, something else has happened, they need bail money, they need money to get home. Sometimes a caller may represent themselves as a police officer or an attorney, sometimes all three. Again, crooks will get on the phone. But for one reason or another, they need money wired. They tell the grandparent, please don't tell my parents. And there was a case in Virginia that an elderly couple wired $100,000 to Hong Kong, thinking they were helping their grandchild. Grandchild was safe and sound at home all the time.
Well, the scammers are definitely insidious.
Yeah.
How do we protect ourselves against scammers?
In terms of seniors, some of the tips, of course, on the low-tech scams, what I call the home improvement, itinerant, the paving scam that we talked about, don't answer the door. When it comes to contracts, read contracts, be sure you understand what you're signing. Don't respond to unsolicited phone calls, text messages. Again, these days we've gone from the phone to email, and now they're going to text messages to send their scam messages. Don't ever respond to these unsolicited messages of any sort that are asking for personal and confidential information.
Now, what about us aging baby boomers? What do you think the future holds for us as we age?
So I think the crooks, unfortunately, will continue to adapt to technology. They'll continue to change their marketing story. And I wish I could be optimistic that somehow we'll beat them. The Federal Trade Commission, if they can figure out how to stop the robocalls, good for them, but they haven't been able to so far.
Unfortunately, there may be always people willing to or trying to separate us from our money, I guess.
Well, it's almost like this whack-a-mole game. You know, you whack one of them down, but another one pops
Yeah.
up, and actually you whack one down and 2 or 3 pop up. It's not that there's more of them than us, but they're working pretty hard.
Randy, thanks for being on The Best Times, telling us about
Thank you.
scams against seniors.
We appreciate the opportunity to share this information.
If you have more questions or need to report a possible scam, contact the local Better Business Bureau or visit one of these websites for more information. Almost 800,000 Americans will suffer a stroke this year. It's the number 5 cause of death in this country. And yet more than a third of Americans can't identify even one of the warning signs of stroke. Can you? Knowing more about strokes can save lives. Maybe yours. What is a stroke?
Well, stroke is a very common and devastating condition. It's the #1 leading cause of permanent disability in adults in the United States and worldwide. It is caused by either disruption of the blood flow to the brain by a blood clot that blocks the brain vessel, or by leaky vessel that produces bleeding to the brain. Unfortunately, we live in southeastern United States, which is also known as stroke belt of the United States. So everyone who is born here is twice likely to experience stroke in their lifetime compared to the same ethnic, genetic make born anywhere else in the United States.
What are the types of strokes?
It's called ischemic or hemorrhagic. These are the terms. So ischemic stroke is the one where blood clot lodges in the brain vessel kind of in the wrong time and the wrong place and precludes blood flow to the brain. Or bleeding to the brain occurs, and that would be hemorrhagic stroke. And this type of stroke is usually caused by high blood pressure and the wear and tear of blood vessels, and then they break off and leak blood flow.
What is a TIA stroke?
TIA is a transient ischemic attack, or some people call it a mini stroke. I'd like to call it a warning that a bigger stroke is coming. And TIA is a transient disruption of blood flow. It is almost always due to blood clot passing through the blood vessels or some blood flow changes that causes malfunction of brain tissue. But the good news is that it is transient, and the true TIAs do not leave any damage to the brain.
What are the symptoms?
What people need to know is FAST. Abbreviation is FAST. Face, arm, speech, time. So droopiness of the face, weakness of one side of the body, speech disturbances when the person cannot get the words out right, the person slurs words or finds the wrong words to express themselves, and then time. Time is of the essence. So the first 60 minutes from these symptom onset, whether it is transient or not, the first 60 minutes will largely determine how the person spends the rest of their lives. So you don't have much time. Within 60 minutes, you need to call 911 or call 911 for somebody who is having a stroke in front of you, and get to the hospital that is treating strokes.
How do you identify the symptoms?
Unlike heart attack, when there is a chest pain, with stroke, there is almost always no pain. Only minority of stroke patients actually call 911 themselves. It is up to relatives, coworkers, bystanders, caregivers to immediately recognize those symptoms.
Who is at risk?
A combination of high blood pressure, overweight, lack of exercise, poor dietary habits, and predisposition to these events, because those things tend to run in the family. So, and these are just very few risk factors. I'm not even talking about smoking and some other obvious things.
What treatment is available?
The only medical treatment that's capable of reversing this disability is called a tissue plasminogen activator, TPA. Simple way to remember, it's clot buster. So if someone has a stroke, you need to ask, bring me to the center that gives clot busting medicine. In Tennessee, we're hoping to have the system statewide geared up like trauma. So you don't bring trauma to the nearest walk-in emergency room, you bring it to the trauma center. So equally so, we would like to have certified stroke centers and the whole state mapped out so the EMS know exactly where to bring the patient.
For more information about strokes, go to the website of the Stroke Association. Want more information about life after 50? Go to our website, wkno.org/besttimes, and send us your feedback and story ideas to besttimes@wkno.org. That's all for this edition of The Best Times. Please join us next week for more stories about life after 50. Until then, I'm Chris Hardaway. Good night. Funding for The Best Times is provided by the Plow Foundation, striving to do the greatest good by helping the greatest number of people since 1964. Additional funding is provided by the members of WKNO. Thank you.